For anyone who has a DSLR camera, such as a Nikon or a Canon, or is looking to get one, I will demonstrate to you the main features that you will need to know when you are going to shoot your photos. To start out, I will show you that on the top of the camera there is a dial, and you can set this to any of these features. Most of these features, though, are very unnecessary. The key features I will be showing you today is TV, AV, and M. M meaning manual, which is something that I am not even a master at. It's everything, you just have to set everything manually yourself. Aperture, shutter speed, ISO, everything. One of my favorites is the AV, and that one is aperture. You set the aperture, the camera will do the ISO and the shutter speed on its own, and it literally like knows what you want. It will just, you can choose from, once I turn this on, when you're at the aperture, you see a dial, and you see the F numbers. You can lower that, lower the F number, and that will blur the background and only focus in on the subject. If you higher it, you will be making your photo more sharp, and it will show everything. Everything will be clear. Another of my favorites is the TV, which is the shutter speed, where you set the shutter speed and the camera will automatically set the aperture and the ISO according to your shutter speed. What's important about that is not only will it focus the picture or make it blurry if you're trying to focus in on one thing, you can set it so that if you move the dial down, if you move the dial down, you will see the motion of your subject. If your subject is running, you will see that they are running. And then if you move it to the top, which I'll show you what it looks like on my camera, if it will focus. Maybe. No, this is not very good. There, kinda. Oh, I'm selecting things. There's the dial right there, and if you move it up to about 1/1000, you're going to catch the motion and you're going to freeze it, so that way you will see, say somebody is kicking a soccer ball, you will get the exact motion of the person kicking the soccer ball, and there won't be any blur. It'll all be a sharp, clear photo. That one is one of my favorites because I like to do a lot of action shots, and I tend to, everywhere I take pictures, everybody's moving anyway, so it always just works out for me. But when I do portraits, I always use AV, because when you blur out the background, it makes everything just your subject. It makes your subject focused, and that's really what they want to see when you're taking a portrait of them. So on to the next would be the ISO. Not on all cameras does it automatically set ISO. That's something that you have to kind of play around with the camera to figure that out. I always double check the ISO before I shoot, because if you don't and it doesn't automatically set it for you, you won't really know how the picture will turn out. So when the ISO is at 100 or 200, down in that's like low. So that means that it's less sensitive to light. So you'd use that when you're in a bright area. Like if you're in a lit room or you're outside on a sunny day, that's what you would use, 100 to 200 for your ISO. You would increase your ISO to probably 800 to 1000, somewhere in there. That means that the camera is more sensitive to the light, which would mean that you're at you're outside at a party or something. Say somebody had it through a party and it was summertime and it was dark, or a concert maybe, late night, anything like that. Fireworks on the 4th of July, if you're trying to catch the picture of the fireworks and maybe somebody in front of them, something like that. Another thing is that if you hadn't noticed, the shutter speed is shown as fractions. They are shown as fractions. And the aperture is shown as F numbers, which is F and a number, which is exactly what it sounds like. So that is something to keep in mind because they're used together. So it's like if you don't understand the aperture and shutter speed, you can get them mixed up, which isn't good because your picture will turn out opposite of how you want it to turn out. So with that being said, not really a feature on the camera, but something I always keep in mind is the exposure. There's light. For example, I was taking pictures by the lake a couple days ago, and it was late. It was past sunset, but it was still light out. But because I could set my exposure on my camera, I was able to lighten up the screen, like the picture itself, in order to take a good picture. And when you can decrease the exposure, say you're in a dark area, or like if you're under a tree and there's shadows, you can lighten the shadows so that way it brings out the subject that you're taking a picture of. For example, I'm going to show you the picture that I took the other day. Like, this is the sunset. It was relatively dark, but because I increased the exposure, I was able to catch the sunset, and it also darkened like the trees and the land in the background of my picture. So those are all of the key features that you need to know when you're using a DSLR camera, or like the main. I'm not a professional photographer, but that is everything that I have learned, and I have been shooting probably for 5 years now. So, I mean, you don't have to be a professional to take pictures, but it's also really nice to know all of these features, so that way if you get a camera to take family photos, it's like you can make them look professional. And that's the reason why I do it, because I don't want to be a professional. But you never know. You can take really good pictures, and some people have an eye for detail. So I hope that these instructions are beneficial to anybody who will be using or buying a DSLR camera in the future.